Well, here comes the final segment in Unit 7, and in this last section, we're going to talk about the finishing cattle feeding programs and wrap up our conversation here in Unit 7 in that manner. So, a few key things that we want to focus on when putting together finishing cattle diets from a nutritional perspective is, of course, our goal is to increase muscle and fat mass. So, nutritionally, we've got to support them that way. That will result then, if we do all that correctly, in producing a good quality meat product. And we're going to target marketing our steers between 1 and 2 years of age, somewhere over 1,000 pounds for most commercial species. So in order to do that, we're going to need crude protein diets somewhere between that 9 and 14% crude protein range. And that's, of course, going to vary with the age of the steers, what frame size that they are, etc., a few different things. Energy concentrations are going to be somewhere between 65 and 85% TDN. Bottom line, our goal is to get very efficient average daily gain on them and really press them right to the edge of what they can do metabolically. Here in kind of similar to what we do in swine with finishing market hogs, is we want to push the metabolic system, the ability of the digestive tract to the digestive tract and the cellular tissue to convert the nutrients that we're feeding to gain as quickly as possible, as efficiently as we can do it. So we're going to press them right to the edge physiologically of what they can do. Now, from time to time when we do that, we get over the edge, across the line, and sometimes can cause metabolic challenges, whether that's ulcers or displaced abomasum or things, bloat, things of that nature. So we want to be careful that we push them right up to that line and then stop short of it, where we're going to get optimum average daily gains. Calcium to phosphorus ratios are going to be typically a 2-to-1, so 2 parts calcium to every part phosphorus. That just gives you a few guidelines on what some things we might be looking at. So estimated feed intake. Remember when we referred to back in Unit 3 that animals eat a percentage of their body weight. Steers, again, 2 to 3% of their body weight. Finishing steers, we would like to get above that 3% if we can. And we're talking about those 400-pound calves and higher. We want to try and push dry matter intakes as high as we can as an efficient rate as we can. So if we can get to 3.5% dry matter intake, that would be great, as long as it's responding appropriately. Some other things that we might be considering. Feeding corn silage. Corn silage will work in place of corn grain, but of course we need to get higher intakes in order to get those gains because it's not quite as energy dense. So roughage to concentrate ratios can either be relatively high if we're feeding corn silage, and they can be relatively low if we're going with a very high grain diet, like down in the bottom of the slide here, where we are 15% forage, 85% concentrate. So we always want to start our ration with examining the profitability of corn. In most cases, corn is going to be the most profitable and most cost-effective ingredient. From time to time, we want to look at other options, though, because there are other grains or byproducts that might be more cost-effective. For example, right now, whenever you're feeding corn at $7, and we've done this a little bit in class, there start to be some other products that we might want to consider replacing corn with in order to cheapen the diet. Again, I mentioned corn silage could be a suitable substitute if you have access to it. But generally speaking, the higher the energy, the faster the gain, which means quicker finishing. So you want to be very, very aware of pushing these steers as hard as you can get them to go. And dry matter intake is typically tied to energy density. So as we get them introduced to the feedlot, our first challenge, of course, is getting them started on feed. And as calves come out, whether they're preconditioned, stocker, or backgrounded calves, that transition phase can be tough because they're going from, they're changing environments. They're perhaps going to be at risk for some shipping fever outbreak. They're changing feeds. They're changing social structure. They've been on a truck most likely. They've perhaps been through a sale barn. So you've got a fairly sizable risk for morbidity and mortality challenges. And that might take a few days to 3 weeks for them to complete that transition. So from time to time, we'll start them on a little bit of a higher roughage diet with some medication, a little bit lower energy density, and then transition them to a higher energy diet. If you've got a feedlot and you have a quarantine pen, that would be a good time, or an all-in, all-out type situation where one pen comes in and they stay in the same pen the whole entire time in the feedlot. So that helps manage your disease transmission risk. But bottom line is we want to get these finishing steers, finishing animals started on the right track. Then we want to maintain that feed intake level, again, pushing them right to the edge physiologically to what they can do without having any kind of stomach upsets or metabolic problems. So we can consider two different approaches. A 2-phase program where we're going to start them on about a half concentrate, half forage diet, and maybe take them from 450 to 800 pounds, maybe 900 pounds, depending on what you want to do. Might be a little corn silage, might be a little forage in the diet, and some supplement. And then transition them to a phase 2 diet, which is 75 to 85% concentrate from 800 pounds to market, and almost no forage in the ration whatsoever. So that would be a logical 2-phase program. A single phase is, we just basically hit them right away with that 75% to 85% concentrate diet, and let them go just from that, starting them on to a finishing diet right away. So it just depends on what you want to do and what works for you. But bottom line is, don't short them on crude protein. We don't want to overfeed them, but that 12 to 14% range is appropriate. So when we're talking the lighter steers, lighter weights, 450 to 800, you're probably on the higher end of the range. When you get to that 900, 1,000, 1,200 pound steer, you should be dropping down to the lower end of the range. And here's a prime time to feed NPN or urea, a non-protein nitrogen source, because it's cheaper, provides you some punch of protein without a lot of additional cost. So some other things to consider and use as needed to help you optimize profitability. Number one, medication. Use them in a targeted manner. I mentioned that transition time, getting finishing cattle started on the feedlot. That's a great time to do it. Lots of feedlots are going to feed ionophores like rumensin all the way through until withdrawal time in order to help them improve feed efficiency. MGA and buffers. Buffers, of course, like sodium bicarbonate out there in order to help maintain rumen pH. That's probably appropriate from time to time and probably occurs at a standard rate across all finishing rations. MGA would be fed if you've got heifers in the pen that are going to feedlot in order to inhibit them from going into estrus. And then perhaps bloat prevention, and this would be appropriate if you are pasture finishing steers. And certainly you want to think about legume concentration to evaluate your risk there. So use these things judiciously. You don't want to get carried away with cost, and it needs to be appropriate. So that wraps up Unit 7. And so your take-home messages that I want to hammer home here is of course, focus on maximum efficiency. As with all things livestock, margins to make money are relatively thin. So we want to make sure that we are optimally feeding and optimally preparing our rations. Consider economics of creep feeding. That's an undeniable management decision to make if you're a cow-calf producer or working with cow-calf producers building nutrition programs. Maximize the effectiveness of your pasture, and I would include corn stalks as part of your pasture or range in that option. So think about how that might fit into the picture, especially as we talk about the cow-calf operation. And then feed aggressively in the finishing phase. Again, we talk about maximum efficiency, but you want to be aggressive in that finishing phase and try and push these steers to their genetic and metabolic edge in order to be most efficient. So that concludes Unit 7. We will look forward to having good discussion in class and then putting together some rations in our case study. Thanks for tuning in.